Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of Modern Mondays. And yeah, just to kind of break into things. I've been away for a while. I've been out in Hawaii for about a month, and so I wasn't really able to record anything. But now I'm back, and I started playing Modern last week and this week. So um, gonna start probably uploading some more stuff on my Modern deck and talk about the state of Modern a little bit and some ideas, things I saw, some deck building ideas, and all the good stuff. So, last where I left off, it was right before the new set came out, the whatchamacallit, the Lord of the Rings set. We were talking about that, seeing how the impact the or how it would impact the meta. At that time, I didn't really think too many cards would see play. I was like, Orcish Bowmaster was going to be a cool card. Wasn't sure how strong it was going to be uh, when it comes to um, that being, or how impactful it would have been in the meta. But for sure, the ring I thought was okay, it could be played, but didn't think it had a big impact either. But ended up being those two cards are probably the cards that have warped the meta, and along with the I guess the land cycling cards that have made their way into Living In and a couple of other blue decks. So they have been seeing a bit of play. But yeah, definitely the Ring and the Orcish Bowmaster are two cards that have made the most impact. When I went to play last week, I didn't really see too much of the Ring. I did see Orcish Bowmaster, but I dealt with it. It wasn't super difficult. This week, I saw more of the Ring and more of Orcish Bowmaster. Neither have really been a huge issue for me per se. I have never let the Ring resolved, so so that's one thing. And then Orcish Bowmaster, I've kind of um, sort of tried to play around it a little bit, uh, but I think last week when it proved to be a more um, problem for me last week when I went because I was just casting Archmage's Charm and then getting punished for it. Namely because I wasn't expecting Orcish Bowmaster to be in some of the decks I was playing against, and that got dropped on me. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's in every black deck that has black, or any deck that has black mana is gonna play Orcish Bowmaster. So those are the things that kind of caught me off surprise there. Uh, I sort of want to try it in this deck. Honestly, it seems like a really good card for control too to play. Not only does it deal just one damage on entering the battlefield, so that takes care of a lot of things. Takes care of like Ragavan, Risen Reef, any of like the dwarves from Mana Dwarfs, from Yawgmoth. So, and it also punishes other players that are playing the Ring. So I think if you're playing the Esper controlled style deck, I think Bowmaster might have a place in the side, if not in the main. Unfortunately, I don't have any copies of Orcish or the Ring to play in my deck, so I had to kind of build my deck. Still experimenting with it. I experimented with two different deck builds, one last week and one this week. Last week I went for more of a Kahira build, more solitudes, subtleties, um, and that one didn't work as great as I wanted to. I was just never able to really stabilize with that particular deck, so maybe something went wrong there, or I just didn't have enough draw power, so I just felt like I was um, down card advantage most of the time. And one reason that could have been is that I'm not playing enough memory delusions, I think, or just enough draw cards that are not Archmage's Charm. And that was the other thing is like when I cast Archmage's Charm, I got punished by Bowmaster. So that's just something I sort of have to work around, play around. And so with this particular build this week, I'm trying a little bit more, um, not drawing cards, but like looking at a top deck, top X amount of cards, and then adding it to your hand. So cards like Shadow Prophecy, cards like Memory Deluge, Those are cards that I'm going to be playing with. Obviously, there's a couple cards that you have to essentially just cut out of the meta now. Namely, something like Jace. Jace just you cannot play Jace anymore. Unfortunately, not only has he been um, power crept by the One Ring, he's also very punishable by the Orcish Bowmaster. Because if you cast Jace and you decide to brainstorm with him, you will face a 4/4 token that will kill your that will kill your Jace and deal 1 damage to your face, and a Bowmaster on the board. So it's one of those cards. Unfortunately, Jace has always been one of my favorite Planeswalker, especially the 4 mana one. He definitely is just not a card that you can play now. Maybe he'll come back one day. Maybe if like Bowmaster gets hit or the ring gets hit, maybe he'll see play in the deck. And even before that, he wasn't that great. I only played one copy of him in my deck just because I wanted to play it, not necessarily because I think he was a good card. I just thought he was. I just wanted to play it in my deck for the sake of playing it. But this particular time, I'm trying to go more of like a waffle topple tapple build, and going less on the planeswalker and more on interaction. Namely, I want to have more than one piece of interaction up, and so I'm trying out like spell pierces and things like that to try to stop the ring from coming out and just interact with maybe other planeswalkers early in the game. And I want to say that has worked out well. I did run into a few problems, and I'll talk about it. So last week, I think I went at just like X2 and dropped because I lost my first 2 rounds. Just got beaten down. This week I did better. I went X1 out of 4 rounds. So I only lost 1 game this week. And I'll break down the games I played, and I'll talk about the deck first, and then I'll break down the games I played and my experiences, and then moving forward, how I would change the deck or what kind of cards I would like to try out in the deck. So let's jump into the deck real quick. I'm gonna try to go as fast as possible. Maybe explain a couple card choices, and then just bounce off of that. All right, so I'm gonna note one thing off first. I'm gonna cut out all the lands. So this is a pile of lands, right? So if you've seen my other deck videos, deck profiles, the land has stayed the same. 25 lands, 9 fetches, 3 trinomes, etc., etc. I don't think I really want to talk about it all that much because that hasn't really changed. And the land for the most part has worked pretty well for me. I've been liking the mana base. I did flood out 1 game, unfortunately, but it happens. So I'm not gonna really delve too deep into the land counts and the mana base. Okay, so let's talk about the main deck. All right, so right now I'm doing 1 Chalice of the Void in the main, 1 in the side. Now, Chalice I think is still a decent card, but just not as strong as before, especially when a lot of decks are moving towards more of a late game plan. Therefore, Chalice is seeing less interaction with the meta, and therefore you probably don't need to have 2 in the main deck. I'm still playing 1 because there are some decks that when you cast it and they just can't out it, you still kind of win. Or it's still good to cast on 0 if you have a feeling you're playing against Rhinos or Living End. So it's still a decent card to have at 1. And then I'll put in the second one if I need it. But for now, 1 Chalice seems to be working okay with me. For interaction, early interaction, I'm trying this sort of split. Namely because Prismatic Ending is still pretty decent of a card. But there's sometimes I just want to interact with things a little bit quicker than waiting for it to be my turn to interact with it. Because I was running into decks that had creatures that were let's say mana or haste creatures, and I couldn't really deal with them. So like Ragavan, for example, but Prismatic Ending does not deal with the dashing Ragavan. I was having issues dealing with Mutavault, or sorry, not Mutavault, Inkmoth Nexus, which I think I got infected to death because I had like 2 Prismatic Ending hands, couldn't really cast it to stop the Inkmoth, or the combo or something like that. So I'm trying out 1 March again, especially since I'm playing Snapcasters again. I'm just gonna go ahead and try it out, and it worked okay yesterday. Like it hit the cards I needed it to hit, especially against creativity. I was able to just snipe out a goblin or snipe out the treasure token, and for 1 mana, and then it just stopped their combo from there. And yeah, Prismatic Ending, I think I still need an out to Ren and 6 and to Fairy. Like those two cards, the cards namely I use Prismatic Ending for, because once they resolve, it's you have a very hard time combating them. Um, Maybe yeah, Shark Typhoon or something, but I'm not playing Shark Typhoon, so I guess maybe if you were playing Shark Typhoon like Waffles build, you might not need the Prismatic, because then you can just deal with Teferi, you can deal with Red and 6 by just running him over with the Shark Typhoon. But for now, Prismatic Endings I think still sort of mandatory to play, and you can still hit other permanents, other artifacts and whatnot. So I think it's still a valid card to play. Um, yeah. All right. Uh, okay, so we're doing two Spell Pierces. Now I know it sort of conflicts with Chalice, but the idea here is to um, either I don't draw Chalice or I do draw the Spell Pierces. I already had one game where I drew Spell Pierce and Chalice, and I already had Chalice on one. But it didn't really matter too much because I was already ahead in card advantage, and I had other counter spells in my hand anyway. So yeah, while Spell Pierce was dead for that particular part, it still worked pretty well in some of my other matches. And yeah, I think it's a card that I'm gonna try to keep in, just namely to deal with the ring. So if like I'm sort of almost tapped out, I want to at least have a Spell Pierce in and ready for turn 4, or maybe turn 5. They decided to drop the ring just to snipe it out. So that's why we're playing the Spell Pierces now. It's just to have more interaction with the ring to stop it from coming out, and that worked pretty well. Had ring cast a few times on me, and it just never resolved. So I never had to deal with an onboard ring. Once the ring becomes on board and online, it's just extraordinarily hard to deal with. You can maybe cast Prismatic Ending for 4, but that seems pretty bad. You could deal with March, casting it for 5, that seems pretty bad. Your best answer is probably Leyline Binding, but then, hopefully you have it in your hand. Most of the time you probably won't. So, philosophy here is just prevention. And it helped me beat Creativity. Granted, Creativity is in a pretty bad spot right now because of the ring. So this card is just namely just to fight other ring decks potentially and whatnot. So we'll have to see if it stays in the deck or not. The two other choices you could potentially play is Minor Misstep or what's the other card? Minor Misstep and Stern Scolding. I found neither. Well, Minor Misstep I just never liked. I always thought it was kind of a meh card. Stern Scolding has more of a significance to play, but I think with the amount of removal I have for like creatures, I guess I just didn't feel like I need to counter specific creatures. Like it's nice to hit Bowmaster and it's nice to hit Ragavan with the Stern Scolding, and maybe like other scam creatures, Risen Reef, etc. But at the same time, I think the more problematic cards are going to be the spells, the permanents. So like if you're playing against Tron and whatnot, they're casting Karn and whatnot, you want to be able to stop that. So I thinking Spell Pierce is going to be a better card for interaction at 1 mana rather than the other options at the moment. So that is sort of like the change I made in the deck. Dress downs were pretty good. I think I might want to bump this up to 2 or 3, either in the main or in the side. Just because you can always cantrip with it if worse comes to worse. But it did help me a few times against Scam yesterday. Unfortunately, that's the matchup I did lose to, but I'll talk about that later in a second. 2 Snapcasters. I took it out for the first build, and I did miserable without the Snapcaster. So honestly, I still think I like the Snap, and it was a pretty cool interaction I had. Well, not cool, but a pretty basic interaction I had with it, going against like Creativity, with the Spell Pierces. Like one turn he tried to Red and 6, I Spell Pierced it. Then he tried to Fairy, I Snap and Spell Pierced it. So it's like, yeah, it was he was not getting anything off of the trying to get any spells into the board, and I think I also hit like a Fable Passage or Fable Fable Passage, no, not Fable Passage, sorry, the Mirror Breaker. I was able to hit hit the that card with the Spell Pierce. Sorry, my brain was just kind of off end there. Anyways, jumping back, Four counter spells. Not much to say about that. Now Teferi here, I tried last week with two. Felt like I needed it, so I decided to put it back at three. Granted, I probably could cut one out for another draw cards. So I could. I was thinking of cutting out one for another Shadow Prophecy or another Memory Deluge, honestly, and then just putting one in the side. Uh, I wanted to try to keep it in to deal with the ring, maybe, because you can bounce the ring and then force them to cast it again, but and then counter it if you have the mana up. But I mean, I'm not too quite sure yet if that is what I'm going to be doing quite yet. So for now, you can either do two Teferis and then like another draw card per se. Yeah, and obviously have the Shadow Prophecy there. And then four Archmage Charms. Still like the card. Still does wonders. You just have to be careful about end step drawing two because now you have to deal with Bowmaster. So depending on the deck that you play against, you may not want to do that. You may want to just keep Archmage in the hand as a counter spell. One Memory Deluge, been trying it out. It worked okay yesterday. I was able to, one game I was able to even flash it back for 7 mana. So maybe I can up this to 2, and then have a bit more draw power that way. And this kind of replaced Jace because I'm more comfortable with casting this than casting Jace nowadays, at least. So if casting Jace, I think you just lose, and that kind of feels bad. So one Verdict. Playing Verdict because I was playing Solitude and Subtlety, and I want to be able to pitch this thing for that. So that's why we're playing the Verdict now, and that came up a few times where I pitched Verdict to a Solitude. So I there you go. I still like Damn, but unfortunately, the way this deck is looking it's more of a blue-white control rather than a pure Esper control deck. Now, if I had Bowmaster, maybe I can just toss them in and change the mana base a little bit, but I don't have Bowmaster right now, so gotta deal with it. I cut the Emperor down to 1. You can honestly just cut her completely if you wanted to, because I'm not playing enough win conditions in the deck, so I'm still gonna try to keep her at 1. Still like the card. Or you can cut her for maybe more interaction like Solitude or maybe more Snapcaster. And then I still like 2 Teferis here. Yeah, when I resolve them, I still sort of won, but yeah, a little risky with Bowmaster nowadays. That's the thing. Like, because the blue-white control tends to draw a lot, you may not want to play Teferi, too many Teferis. Same thing with the big baby Teferis, because then if they cast Bowmaster in response to your cast of Teferi, you're gonna be in a world of hurt. So just be careful. Play around it. Make sure you have mana to counter stuff, or just have a sense that your opponent doesn't have a Bowmaster in hand to threaten you. And last off, 4 and 3. I went 4 last week, didn't like it too much, so I dropped it back down to 3. I would say maybe go 4 Solitudes if you had more Memory Deluge or more Shadow Prophecies. For now, I'm keeping Shadow at 2, or at 1, sorry, namely because I'm afraid of the life loss, and afraid of Bowmaster just doing a lot of damage to me. So that's why I have that sort of this ratio. But yeah, the one change I would make to deck was maybe do that or add in something like a 1 mana like Fatal Push or some. So I guess the other options is add in more 1 mana interaction, Fatal Pushes to deal with the Bowmaster, or have more like marches or something that can deal with those cards without putting you too far behind on mana and whatnot. So like more of a low cost, cheaper option, but I haven't really experimented too much with it quite yet. For now, this is what I have, and we'll just run with that for now. And that's what I was playing yesterday. Now let's talk about the side deck real quick. I have the extra Chalice in here. I have 1 Sanctifier. Sanctifier, I played against Burn, played against Scam, didn't see it. So it's still not a bad card, honestly. I think either 1 copy is just fine enough. I was playing 2 back then, but I'm having a little issues fitting stuff into my sideboard. Two Hollow Moonlights uh, worked out pretty well for me yesterday against the Creativity deck. 'Cause Creativity, I still think is my worst matchup. It's the hardest matchup just because they have so much value going on with it. But luckily, Creativity has been on the downplay because of the ring, and we can just talk about that in a second here. Two Dolphins Veto, three Aether Gus worked pretty well for me against Creativity. Against Scam, I think I did like two or something like that. Maybe cut it down to two. I'm not too sure yet. Three Kai's Guile. It won me the games that it did resolve. I resolved this twice against Scam, same game. I resolved this against Burn, and won. So it still has its uses, I think, and I still think it's one of the better black cards to play in your sideboard just because it's so versatile. I don't know if three copies is the right amount. Maybe two copies is better. But I ordered a couple more cards for my deck, and we'll see if those come in, and I might be able to test it out. And finally, another Verdict, and then just two Subtleties in the side. Subtleties you probably don't need, but I still like them as another sort of win condition against decks that are like heavy planeswalkers or heavy on creatures. It just really depends. Against Tron, this is so good against Tron. You just like force them to not be able to play Karn, force them not to be able to do those things. So, not so great against the ring, but it is what it is. All right. So for my matchups yesterday, I played against first round I played against a combo deck. It was I think in Thassa's and Thassa Demonic Consultation, a combo deck, and then I played against second round I played against. Let me think. What did I play round two? Oh, round two I think I played against Scam. Yeah, round two I played against Scam. Round three I played against Creativity, and in round four I played against Boros Burn. So with the Thassa's Oracle game, they're a combo deck. I'm a control deck. I just essentially just kind of won that game fairly easily because I had a lot of interaction with all of their cards that they were trying to do. Spell Pierces, we had Chalice on one, I had all of that, and my opponent just could not play through all the counter spells and interaction that I had up, on top of just adding more interactions on post sideboard. So I'm not gonna really say too much about that. I think it was more of a pet deck, and he wanted to try it out, and he played his worst matchup. So can't really say too much about that. Round two was the time where I think taught me a lot about like the current state of Modern, I guess, because Scam deck was playing the Ring and it was also playing Bowmaster. Now game one, I think it was just unfortunate that I kind of flooded out game one, and he like double or triple thought sees me, and then I couldn't deal with a dashing Ragavan. So those were the sort of like the combination that led up to my loss game one. Like he kept dashing because he thought sees me, saw that I had prismatic endings in hand, and from there he just kept dashing the Ragavan in, and I just couldn't deal with it for a long time. By the time I could deal with it, it was already too late. I was like at like 3-4 health, and unfortunately, that's how I lost my game to Scam's game one. Game two definitely went better than my odds. I just was able to resolve Kai's Guile twice. Snapcaster, Kai's Guile. Went for Archmage's Charm when he had one card in hand. Which, I guess in hindsight, if that was a Bowmaster, I guess I might have not won that game. But fortunately, it wasn't a Bowmaster, so I went Archmage, draw two, Memory Deluge, got Memory Deluge off it, drew two more, then I think got like a Shadow Prophecy. So I just like rebuilt my entire hand with like one sort of like line of plays, and then just kind of drowned him in advantages after that. So that was game two. Game three, he went first, had a Delphi on the board, and just the Delphi was taking my counter spells, was taking like stuff like that. I just didn't have removal for the Delphi at all. Like I didn't draw any Prismatic, I didn't draw any Solitudes, didn't draw any board wipes or anything, and so I couldn't really deal with it. And that was basically kind of just lost the Delphi beatdown, and couldn't really come back from that. He did try to cast the ring, I think, game two a few times. I countered it. He also cast Torok for kickered it, and then I dressed down that, so that was pretty good. Torok was still a pain in the ass to deal with because I didn't have any non-white removal cards. Because I think I ended up siding some of it out, so I had a Snapcaster on the board. I was hoping he would attack with a Torok, but he didn't. So he maybe read that I had Snapcaster. I'm not too sure. After I dressed down him, or I forgot what exact term, but either way, dealing with Torok was kind of a pain. I had the Emperor out, and I like made double Emperor tokens and whatnot. Hindsight, I think I was being stupid because I forgot the Emperor tokens couldn't block the Turok anyways, so I was trying to defend the Emperor, but I was like, wait a minute, it has protection, so I couldn't block it. So Emperor died for essentially for free, but it still got me two samurais, which kept him at bay because he was really low on health too. I think he was maybe like 6 health to my 8 or something. So we're basically just kind of racing, right? So every time he swung with Torok, I swung 2 Emperor tokens at him, and we were just like racing, right? And eventually, I was just kind of started stabilizing, and that's when he started losing ground. Because his Torok was only a 2/1, and he wasn't making me discard anything, and he couldn't really buff it. So yeah, I think that's basically how I just won game 2. But yeah, game 3 unfortunately just went down the path where I just couldn't remove a Dalfi, I guess. So bad draws, I guess. I guess maybe I had better draws or something. Why I sided in, I think I did because I saw Croxas. I think I did like Kai's Guile, maybe 1 or 2 Aethergust, and I think a Sanctifier and a Chalice there. And that was my side against them. So I think the matchup is honestly just kind of who goes first and who doesn't really draw like their bad cards, I guess. But yeah, unfortunately, that was just game 2, so lost there. Game 3 was against Creativity. It was a little rough going game 1. But like I guess I just eventually was able to stabilize and just had enough interaction to deal with every single thing he was trying to put out. So he never resolved Creativity. I just had so many like cheap interactions to get rid of his goblins, to take control of his goblins when he Creativity. So that was it. Game 2 more or less was kind of the same case. For the first, I think he put in way too many interaction post Cyborg, because for the first like 3 or 4 turns, he wasn't casting anything. He wasn't casting any Fables. He wasn't casting any Wrens or Teferis, or maybe he didn't see any of them, or he kept a handful of interaction. At the end of the game, he said he did keep in, just kept a handful of interaction like Spell Pierces, Flush the Storms. I think like Veil maybe. So that just gave me time to sort of build up my arsenal also. And so I was just testing waters. I just throw out Archmage Charms here and there, throw out a couple of like draw cards, and I was stuck with 6 mana for like a long time. I was not drawing any lands. I was drawing just interaction after interaction. He wasn't having anything for me to interact with per se. But regardless, eventually he did hard cast an Archon, and then I think I tried to remove it with a Solitude, or I dressed down the Archon, right? So it comes out, doesn't do anything. Next turn he tries to attack with the Archon. I entering combat, I Solitude it, and then I think he tries to Leyline Binding it, which I thought was really an interesting play. So he Leyline Bindings his own his own what's his name, Archon, right? And then I was like, okay, yeah, I'll let that resolve. Like I'm not gonna really challenge that, right? If you want to Leyline Binding that, then that's fine. And after that, he Leyline Binding his Leyline Binding, and I was like, oh, okay, I see. Well, that's the initial thought I had, is that he had some way of removing his Leyline Binding off of the Archon. So I was thinking maybe he's a Leyline Binding, right, and then maybe like Boseiju it or something, right? Or Leyline Binding his own Leyline Binding. So I was like, okay, I'll let it resolve. So he cast another Leyline Binding targeting his Leyline Binding, and that's when I casted Harlow Moonlight. And yeah, and that essentially just kind of won me the game too right there, because once Archon came back and it wasn't casted, it just got exiled, and I got a free card, and I took out two of his interaction, took out two of his leyline bindings, plus the Archon. So that basically kind of sealed the game for me there, and I won game two that way. Like, I thought it was a pretty cool play, unique play indeed. It's just I had a better interaction with it. I also had counter spells in my hand, so I wasn't super worried. Like, if I didn't have Hollow Moonlight, then maybe I would have countered the Leyline Binding, or his Leyline Binding, targeting his Leyline Binding. That way the Archon wouldn't come back. But yeah, so I 2-load there. Against Burn, game one was pretty scary. I was really low. But I managed to start pumping out a bunch of Solitudes onto the board and just kept swinging in with Solitudes. And he was stuck on 2 lands for quite a while. And so that's basically how I kind of just won. And I think he kind of misplayed it a little bit. And I also had Teferi on the board, or Baby Teferi on the board, which made his game playing a lot harder because he had to like play all of his spells during his turn and couldn't wait for me to tap out on my turn or something like that to punish me. So that I won game one that way. Game two, more or less, he had early Goblin Guide, attacked me, deal a bunch of damage, all that jazz. I eventually got out a Chalice on one, which kind of hindered him a lot. Then I managed to, I think, double Kaya's Guile or something like that. Kaya's Guile and snap Kaya's Guile, and I just healed up a bunch, and then I managed to finally get out just a Solitude on nothing and just beat him down with the Solitude, while also protecting the Solitude with counter spells. So Boros Burn, I 2-load there. So yeah, the only match I lost to was basically the scam. I 2-load everyone else. But yeah, that was my experience there. So looking forward, or looking, I guess, forward, right? What changes I would make to the deck? Like I sort of discussed it early in the video, I think Bowmaster is a card that it's definitely a card that act as both a punishment and a sort of like a question sort of thing, or I guess an answer and a threat, right? So like if your opponent is on the ring, then you cast Bowmaster. You force them to try to deal with it, otherwise they would just like lose the Bowmaster if they kept drawing with Bowmaster and making your token really big. Or it can also be an answer into, or a threat. Or in that scenario, it's a threat, right? In the scenario where it's an answer, I guess you can answer like Ragavan, you can answer any 1-mana creature just because it deals 1, or even 2-mana creature, or a 2 toughness creature. So if a 2 toughness creature attacks, you can flash in Bowmaster, deal 1 damage to the creature, make a blocker, make a 1/1 orc, and then send the orc as a blocker to that 2-mana creature, and or is that 2-mana creature, the 2 toughness creature, and that 2 toughness creature will die, and you still have your Bowmaster. So I do think moving forward, if I were able to get my hands on Bowmaster, I would just try it out in deck. I don't know if I would play a full play set. Probably not, because you really can't make use of Bowmaster as well as something like Scam or Yawgmoth. I know Yawgmoth can make use of Bowmaster, because like they can get Bowmaster on the board if their opponent draws. It triggers Bowmaster, makes a token, and then they can sack that token to Yawgmoth, draw a card, and then for each instances, I guess, of the opponent drawing, they can just keep like looping that sort of gameplay with the Bowmaster, and it gets pretty crazy. But yeah, with the control deck, I don't know how much use you can do that with the Bowmaster. I mean, you can like do something cheeky like Archmage Charm and target your opponent, right, and have them draw 2, and then you can buff up a Bowmaster. But that seems kind of like a waste of card advantage, unless you're trying to kill them that turn. But yeah, I mean that's just an interesting interaction there. Other than that, I think I'll still keep the Spell Pierces. I know Snapcaster is a little weak to Bowmasters for sure. Like they can kill this and whatnot, but for me, I don't really value Snapcaster that much in terms of like if it dies to a Bowmaster, it's fine, Most of the time yesterday when I did cast Snapcaster, I'd use it to deal with other things, and my opponent eventually even had to block his Bowmaster against my Snapcaster because I was just getting rid of his board and pressuring him with the scam against the scam player. So I still like Snap. Maybe even bump it up to 3 again. I don't, obviously not 4, but I think 3 maybe even if I play more cheaper interaction, or even with like Fatal Push or something like that. But because I have so many enchantments at the moment, I have a lot of dress downs, a lot of leyline binding. That's why I'm keeping Snap at 2. Not really gonna bump up his numbers. And obviously he's been sort of power crept from most of the control decks nowadays, but I still like him as a card, and so that's why I still keep him in there. Same thing with like the big Teferi and the Emperor. Like I know you can, there's better cards to play, but I'm still willing to play them, and their uses through other matches, against other matchups are still pretty good. But just 4 mana Jace always felt bad, even before Bowmaster came out. He always felt bad to play, so that's why I just kind of cut him from the deck for now and just focus on more cost efficient, low mana interaction, and we'll kind of go forward from there as I play. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it's a little long one and sort of a waited for some of my viewers. I know I haven't really been focused on too much Magic content lately. Maybe because, well, one, like I explained in the last video, like I felt a little burnt out by playing too much Modern, and the meta was not really shifting, and I was kind of felt like I was not really enjoying the format because it had a lot of like repetitive gameplay loop on top of just value after value after value, and being a control deck, that's, you're not really generating that much value compared to your opponent's deck, so it felt really bad to play. And yeah, well, that problem isn't really solved yet. We'll have to see. They are making a ban announcement on Monday, so maybe they'll shake up the meta. That's to be hopeful there, but we'll have to see. For now, I am enjoying just seeing just random decks in the format, like Tron and whatnot. I haven't played against any of the new Tron decks yet, so we'll see. But it's kind of nice to see like Tron coming back. Scam is not as, or creativity is not as popular anymore because of the ring. Because if they cast the ring and you try to Archon them, you can't even target them with the Archon. So that's kind of nice, honestly. It's kind of nice that Archon is out of the format, because that for me was my absolute worst matchup. Another bad matchup is also sort of like Omnath, and Omnath is sort of also seeing that much play compared to like Rhinos or Living End or even Yawgmoth. I saw Yawgmoth yesterday. It was pretty crazy with like double Bowmaster and the ring. But yeah, maybe they'll hit the ring this upcoming ban list. I don't think so, namely because it is sort of a brand new card. Maybe they'll hit it like a month or two later, but depends, because like I guess the old Pro Tours and all that, they I guess their result is like half the decks were playing ring, right? So I guess maybe they have to address it, or at least talk about it. I don't know. Like I said, I don't think they'll ban it, but they'll should at least mention it in the upcoming ban list. Maybe they want to keep an eye on it, see what it does. But yeah, that's it, guys. Hopefully I'll be making another episode next week. I probably should, because I think I'll be going out to play. But for now, this is kind of the deck I'm building. I guess I want to talk about one card maybe that I might want to try. Stone of E-Rich, which I thought Maguchi, I think I can never pronounce his name. He was playing it because he was talking about how it's okay against Scam, because when a creature dies, it exiles it, and when you can crack it and crack it against something like the when you need to hit a graveyard. But the cracking it is kind of expensive. It's 2 mana, so I mean I don't know if that's worth it. But Stone of E-Rich is kind of like a pseudo rest in peace that you can crack for 2 mana to draw a card and exile their graveyard, and that is also useful because I want to keep my graveyard. I don't want to exile my own graveyard because I have Snapcasters and Memory Deluges. So those are just some of other cards I might want to try. I also thought about Lauren's the Island Cycling card. That one looked interesting. I just don't have any copies of it quite yet. But yeah, it seems pretty like a decent card, right? You can pitch it you can pitch it with subtlety. Because it is a blue card. It's technically a land, because you can cycle it for 1, grab any island you want. It doesn't have to be a basic, so you can grab Hollow Fountains if you wanted to. Um, so that card looked interesting, and if not late game, you can cast it for 5 mana and draw 3 cards. So I don't know. If I can get my hands on a couple copies of those, maybe 2, I could try it out in blue in a control deck and see how it does. But as of now, I don't plan on playing it because I don't have any copies yet. Anyways, that's it. I'll see you guys next week, hopefully, and get out there and start playing, man. See ya.